Welcome to 6 Degrees of Purpose, where Ollie and I have the privilege of having conversations with business leaders, entrepreneurs and practitioners about the meaning of money, wealth and purpose.
We've got a really incredible conversation lined up for you today. We were lucky enough to be joined by prolific entrepreneur and founder Joanna Jensen. Joanna built and sold a #1 skincare brand, Child's Farm, to PZ Cussons. And it's a conversation about how you rediscover your purpose after building a business and going through a sales process. Today, she is an author, a columnist for the Sunday Times. She's written a fantastic book called Making Business Child's Play, which I'd highly recommend. And she's the chair of the EIS Association. So she is one very busy individual, incredibly well-placed to share insight with us today.
You can find us on Spotify and Apple. Please do give us a review, a follow and a like. You can also find us on thisis6.com. So we look forward to hearing who you would like to hear from us next.
Joanna Jensen, welcome to 6 Degrees of Purpose. Thank you for joining us.
That's a pleasure.
Delighted to have you on. We'd love to just dive into the conversation. Now, you have done an awful lot of work backing businesses and delivering expertise to particularly female founders. One of the stats that stuck with us is how 95% of female-owned businesses tend to be addressing a need. We thought that was very interesting. It's something we see in our client base. We'd love to hear a little bit about the need that you were creating Child's Farm for. And we know the personal story, but we'd love to hear any other needs that you were creating the business for, or whether it was a means to an end for you.
Yeah, a great question, Ollie. I mean, I think the reality is there's always a starting point, that light bulb moment where you come up with that idea. And as you say, 90% of women, it's because they have a need. And for me, that need was a daughter with really bad eczema. She had atopic eczema, really poorly skinned and a lot of pain. And it was really, really unpleasant. But funny enough, I was talking to somebody this morning and it reminded me of that time when I started Child's Farm. And my then husband had been in the same role for 20 years and he got made redundant. It was 2008.
Yeah.
It was when the banks were having another crisis. And I knew we couldn't afford to carry on living where we were if we didn't make a change. And I didn't want to go back to my previous job, which was also in the city. So not only did I rent the house out and do B&B, but also rented the barn out for weddings. I used that as an opportunity to start this business because I knew we needed money, not B&B money, not wedding money, but proper money if we were going to stay in our home. And I had a newborn in my arms. So it all came at a really tense time, I suppose. But so for me, it was a motivation. And then subsequently, we got divorced. So even then, the motivation was greater. I needed to be financially independent so I could bring up my girls. And for me, that was the key driver. Yes, I'd created a solution for Bella's poorly skin, but I'd done that. The rest of it was to make sure that that changed our lives.
What did financial independence mean to you then? And how does it differ to what it means now?
For me, it meant not relying on another person to take charge of the purse strings, which I found really difficult, especially when they did a really bad job. The other thing was to know that I could give my children everything that they needed, not, toys and gifts and things like that, but a decent education, the opportunity to take advantage of circumstances as they came across. In my life as a child, we were scrimp and savers. There was never enough money. Everything you had to sort of beg, borrow and steal, and we were always working. Now, my girls in the holidays always work because they know if they want something, they've got to go and find the money for it. But they've been very lucky and had fantastic educations and have the opportunity to do the career that they want pretty much on their terms rather than being forced to do something that they don't necessarily want to do, but it's cash.
Is that a result of values that you instilled in them growing up, or is that something you told them when they were 18, this is our expectations? How do you approach that journey with the kids?
Well, Catherine, you're a working mum.
Yes.
And I think the rub-off of being a working parent around your children is fantastic because they see what you're doing. So for my girls, it's been two-pronged. One is they've seen me as this example. I mean, a bad example because I am a workaholic, but an example of someone who is giving it their all and, will turn over every stone for perfection, probably too many stones. And then the other half of it is the fact that I tell them, if you want something, that's great. What are you going to go and earn? How are you going to earn the money to get that? And it's nature and nurture. So they've seen by osmosis what I've done, but I'm also reinforcing that with the fact that I don't want my kids loafing around the house, having no values and having nothing to strive for and no ambition. That really does wear off. And I think it's so important. I've seen too many kids who come from wealthy families who have absolutely no purpose. And that's why we're here, isn't it, on this planet? And as you get older, you realize that we're not here for very long. But that's what we're here to do, is to leave behind something. I always say, I want an epitaph that says, she did something or she made a difference. That's all I care about. I don't want to be known as someone who was, dust and it didn't matter.
I've got so many thoughts on this, as you might imagine. But that constantly moving forward and always finding direction towards that purpose comes with a need for energy. Yeah. It comes with a need for passion, for something that you really love. And your girls must have seen that and felt that and felt the resilience probably that had to come with that. Is that a value you feel that you've instilled in them and that you hold dear to yourself as well, that resilience of just carrying on and getting on with it?
Well, we talk about resilience a lot, particularly in the younger generation at the moment. And I can say that my girls are incredibly resilient because I'm afraid I'm not very patient. I can't do it. Have you tried? I'm not sure I want to do that. Why? As children, we were told, God forfend you actually turned around and said, I'm bored. We'd be told to write a poem, write a play, paint a picture. There were a myriad of other things for you to do. Now, of course, you can watch a million movies on any channel. You can go on your social media and fall down a rabbit hole for half an hour. But my girls, I'm really proud of them, and actually both of my stepchildren. So I think my husband and I are very aligned on this, is nothing is a gift. We are so lucky to live in this country. I know potholes and all, but we live in this country which allows us to have a roof over our head, to have food in our fridges, and opportunity that girls and boys can learn at the same level. That people in this country are not having to give birth in a multi-story car park whilst it's being bombed. We have so much just by the virtue of living in this country. I don't think we appreciate it enough. And I know my children, I was that parent that would say, there are people starving in Africa that would love to finish that macaroni cheese, and they would eye roll and all the rest of it. But it has actually instilled a sense of value within them both. And it's a joy to see that. I'm more of a stick and carrot person. I'm not, as you probably realize, I speak my mind. And I think that's a good thing most of the time. Sometimes I can cause enormous offense. But I think it's really important that we're allowed to, and we're not cancelled for being frank, because being frank gets shit done. And you can stop people having we can all have a fantasy, but if it's an unrealistic fantasy, don't encourage that. It's like I'd say to guys that used to work with me, don't have an idea and run off and squirrel around for days and weeks and then present it. Ta-da! Check first if that idea is going to form part of the strategy that we have in place, because nobody wants someone to put their blood, sweat and tears into a project that has no relevance to your strategic or tactical direction. Does that make sense?
It does. Do you think people overrate ideas and underrate execution?
Yes. I always say there are founders and there are entrepreneurs. Anyone can found a business. But entrepreneurship is about taking risk and understanding and weighing that risk. Because if you go at these things blind, I use an example in my book, Making Strawberry Marmalade. If your granny is the only person that says they think it's a good idea, the alarm bells should be firing in your brain, because a survey of one is no value to anyone. I mean, I get people that say to me, I've even had people that come to me and say, I want to be an entrepreneur. Great. What's your idea? Oh, I don't know. That's why I wanted to speak to you. You know, the idea has to come from a place. Like, you guys want to make purposeful investing and purpose behind the choices you make around money. I wanted to help children that had poorly and eczema-prone skin with a product that worked for my own daughter. There's purpose. We're creating something that is going to add value to people's lives. When I was told that someone was creating a pad that you could kneel on while you gave your child a bath, and this was revolutionary, and I said, what, like a gardening pad or a cushion? You know, you have to sort of draw breath.
Yes.
And, you know, there's huge amounts of passion behind that idea, obviously. But I think it's our duty to stop people making costly errors.
I recognise that frankness and also embrace that
you do.
as a trait.
Agree.
That said, as you rightly referenced, it's not always the right thing to do.
I put my foot in it all the time.
As do I. And I'd be interested to hear if there was a time where there was a piece of advice you gave and actually you wouldn't have given it again.
Oh, God, there's so many times. So many times. I'm one of those people that I internalize everything. So I'll say something, and then afterwards, in my head, I'm going, God, you bloody cow. Why did you say that? How did you do that? You've really offended them. You've really upset them, because the head and the heart they're not very joined up. And I spend my life apologizing. And that is, you know, it's a good thing because I'm conscious. And it's a bad thing because I can offend and upset people. It's a lot easier now. I think I'm better at it now, I hope, because I'm not stressed up the wazoo. Although saying that, at the moment, I am very stressed up at the wazoo because my cup runneth over. But it is, I think it's what makes us human. And as long as you're conscious inside and you can apologize and mean it when you apologize, not this, oh, I'm sorry, but it is genuine, heartfelt. I'm really sorry. I probably said the wrong thing and I do apologize. You see, I've got two girls. My eldest says sorry, but my youngest says, sorry, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that. So the eldest, we get really cross with. And the youngest, who will have done something utterly criminal, apologizes immediately, and we're stumped. And we have to go, oh, right. Okay, but don't do it again. I know, I won't. I'm really sorry.
But interestingly, apologizing in business has previously been seen as a weakness. But I think the best leaders are those who are most vulnerable and can recognize when they can say it, but also when they need to apologize.
It's taking ownership of your actions. You know, accept it. Accept the part that you've played. Accept what decisions you've made. But the people who it's very hard to warm to are the ones that don't. And they're blameless. The Teflon team, as I call them.
Yes. There's a lot of them out there at the moment.
Oh, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
And I find it, you know, I'm lucky. I'm in a position where if I don't like that, I can just walk away. And, you know, no skin off my nose. But they're out there. And I think that's why people that you do business with and people that you work with, it all boils down to chemistry. Never underestimate how important chemistry is. And we spoke earlier about the fact that, you know, sometimes your business is not for some, but it is for others. That's chemistry. You know, we talked about my investor who pulled out at the 11th hour. I never had any chemistry with him, but I was so desperate, I compromised my ethics and values. And thank God he did pull out. Otherwise, that business would not have been mine for longer than a year.
Did you have gut feelings about that at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's an absolute arse. And just really unpleasant and rude and egotistical. And that's when ego gets in the way, walk away. When it's all about ego, walk away. Because that changes everything. And you're never going to be good enough. You're never going to do the right thing. You're never going to be seen in their eyes as anything other than a cog in a wheel.
So when it came, I'd like to bring it back to purpose and think about the sale to PZ Cussons, because a sale process is never straightforward and always takes longer than people expect it to. And there are so many different factors at play. And you had a very clear purpose before the sale. How did that change?
Well, when they approached us, they were saying things that absolutely resonated with us, which was about purpose, sustainability, absolutely everything. So I felt they were a very safe pair of hands. If you're meaning how did it change when I left? I felt like a lost soul.
Did you?
I felt like that minister without portfolio. And we talked about things that I would do, and they very quickly were not part of my remit anymore. And I completely understood that, but it didn't, this had been something I'd lived and breathed for 10 years, 11 years. And suddenly it wasn't there. A girlfriend of mine experienced the same thing. She didn't stay on. She actually sold her business completely. And she had a breakdown because she said, she took up dancing. But she just said, I feel like I've got no purpose. And somebody said to me, actually, my lead investor, Andrew Leake, had said to me, don't do anything for 6 months, sit on your hands. And 6 days it took before I invested in another business.
6 days?
6 days.
Between you completing and you starting?
Yes.
Wow.
Pathetic.
Okay.
So no self-control whatsoever. I just couldn't go from this manic full-on to less so. And I think that took me about 6 months to sort of come down from this huge high and this huge, I was just full of stress and exhaustion and everything. To not start swearing at Instagram took about 6 months.
Did you expect to feel bereft in some way? And did anyone talk to you about how that might feel after selling?
No. Weirdly, I didn't know how to feel. And nobody spoke about it. Now, of course, I've got a plethora of exited-founded friends, and we talk about it all the time. And people that are on the verge of selling will, get in touch and say, please tell me, how am I going to feel through all of this? And what's ironic is my husband used to say to me, stop moaning and look at your bank balance. It didn't cut the mustard. Looking at the money made no difference. And I thought I'd made the most enormous mistake by selling the business.
You regretted it?
I did regret it for a while. I regretted it because people went on and did other things. I regretted it because this thing that I'd nurtured and created was now going in a different direction. So that was the control freak in me going, Lots of things. The money was no compensation for, yes, I could buy nice things and we could go on nice holidays. But as you get older as well, you realize how much is enough? How much do you really need? Do these things really matter? I'm going to end up in a box at some point. It doesn't matter whether I've got a decent telly or a nice car. It's irrelevant. And that's when I very quickly, my lens changed from moaning to helping and to using my experience, as I say, to share with others what took me 6 months and 6 minutes.
Yeah. Have you always known that you were a solution provider?
Always. I was annoying as a child, intensely annoying. I was told this ad infinitum. My youngest gets the same moniker too. But I was told the whole time I was too full on, I was too busy. I always wanted to do, I was always offering solutions. Bella's only 17. And yet she'll turn around and say, oh, don't do this because whatever. We listen to her. And I stand back to my husband and go, why are you listening to her? She's talking utter bollocks. But we listen to her because she's so compelling. She says it with, such determination. And that's what I was like. And I see me in her all the time. And where I was slammed down the whole time for it, I very much say, go for it, Bells, but I'm just going to ignore you on this one. And that's really important. And, she's got ADHD. I probably did too. But, it's sort of, I've read endless books about how to get the best out of her. I know as a child, my mother did nothing to try and get the best out of us. So I just want to be sure that, to understand the way her brain thinks and works is a lot easier for me because we're so similar. And our purpose for all of our kids is to get the best out of them. How can we see the best that they have to offer in their life?
I find this interesting because having known you've been your solution and creative, you went into a corporate world and then left to be an entrepreneur. But entrepreneurs are born. They can be grown too. I recognise that. But it sounds like that was always what you were made to do, to create something. But yet you had this other career first.
But I did. I mean, my first selling job was when I was 13. And I made little Fime, that sort of plastic stuff you put in the oven. Fime pigs, which I sold in my grandparents' antique shop. And, they'd sell out and I'll have to make them again because grannies bought them as presents. I mean, they were just they were quite cool. And then, I always worked. I set up a French polishing business when I was in my teens in the holidays to pay for stuff. And my first business I started when I was 20, which was an interior design business. So I mixed and matched between things. I went out to Hong Kong. I read my ex-husband's book on derivatives trading. And I thought, oh, God, that doesn't look that difficult. So I started working for an investment bank out there. I've got an insatiable curiosity. And I would say that I'm a jack of all trades. I'm good at lots of things. I'm not sure what I'm brilliant at, if I am brilliant at all. I'm an absolute generalist. And I quite like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite helpful. So I'm not afraid to pull out the washing machine and have a go at fixing it myself. I'm not as bad as my sister, who just does fix it and then says, actually, these 2 rooms, wouldn't they be better if they were knocked through? And goes out and gets a sledgehammer. So we had to be practical as kids. And that stuck with me. And I like it. I like being practical and solution providing and a person people can rely on in a crisis.
Yeah. There when needed, not when not.
Yeah. Although I'll still keep talking. So I'll be quietly wittering away. I was told to shut up yesterday if I couldn't say anything nice. So I sat there at the dinner table for 20 minutes and started using hand signals instead.
Because at the moment, there's an enormous amount on your agenda, not only the Enterprise Investment Scheme Association and entrepreneurship more generally, but I'm thinking Buy Women Built, I'm thinking the book and the publicity around that, I'm thinking the family, dogs. How do you prioritize?
Badly. I find it really hard to say no, and I am training myself. That was my New Year's resolution, is to say no. So, for example, I was dear Hannah Previtt, who writes, assistant editor for the Sunday Times, Business and Money. Her father died very unexpectedly. So John, her editor, said, could you cover for 2 weeks? And that 2 weeks has turned into 5. And I haven't really had the time to do it, but I've been doing it. And then I'm doing my first TED Talk next weekend.
Oh, yes.
And I've written it, but I haven't learnt it. And then a great girlfriend of mine who's written the most fantastic report, the RISE report on female entrepreneurship in the UK. She got fantastic data. Over 2,000 people contributed to it. Nottingham Business School got involved. Barclays sponsored it. She said, I've got no one to write it. And so I've ended up writing that. And so it's like buses. There aren't any for a while. And then, of course, we're approaching International Women's Day. So I've got 2 weeks flat out. I just had to explain to my husband I won't be back any night next week because I'm talking every single night. And then I've got a break. And then I am, I hope, going to have a couple of weeks where I can just hang out with the kids over Easter. Although I just discovered my eldest doesn't have an Easter break. She's at university in Trinity, Dublin. But she's here now. Not sure how that works out. Yeah. So it is. I'm now going to get better about doing stuff that I really want to do that makes sense. But 70% of my stuff is pro bono, so I don't charge for. So I need to charge for the other stuff so I can do and help people out for free. And that's, communities, organizations that support entrepreneurs, particularly female founders, anything that can spread the word about what it is that we can do. And the EIS Association chairmanship is something I feel so passionately about, because not only do high net worth individuals not realize how much they can do tax efficiently to help entrepreneurs in this country, but entrepreneurs themselves aren't aware of that organization and how EIS can help them. And as you said earlier, SEIS helped you start your business. These are fantastic opportunities for people to make a difference. I mean, your average investment in an EIS is £10,000.
Okay.
So it's not as much as people think it could be, or unless you're mad like me, and I totted up how much I'd invested the other day, had to have a sit down. But it's in my blood. This is my passion. I feel really safe investing in startup and scaling enterprises. So I'm now living a life which is totally around my passion. And I love being able to give entrepreneurs a voice through the newspapers or through radio, through TV, all the other mediums that I operate on, because that is so important for this country. We talk about growth. We talk about the need for growth. You need to understand how you get that growth. And the only people that can really tell you are people who've done it themselves.
We were talking a while ago about how business experience and entrepreneurship experience tends to be under benchmarked in government generally.
Totally, yeah.
And we always think this is a huge opportunity for any future government to think about how to incorporate entrepreneurship. We saw James Timpson, for example. We thought that was quite an interesting appointment in terms of prisons last time. However, there's opportunity still. And I just wondered how well do you think the government's doing around this at the moment, and what could they do differently in a practical sense to help UK entrepreneurs?
I think that's a really, really good question. I have to say my own experience of this government is good. Blair McDonnell, who is the Minister for Small Business and Transformation, Economic Transformation, he himself was an entrepreneur. He listens. He surrounds himself with people that have been there and done it. I look at the Department of Business and Trade, Katie Ramsey, who's running finance, fintech, Debbie Warsco, who has been doing the Invest in Women's task force and has raised £635 million to invest in women. And she and Hannah did that by literally knocking on doors and rattling their tins. So, you may look at the great grand scheme of things and say, oh, it is a profound addition to what's available. So I look at Emma Jones also, there are entrepreneurs feeding in this information. Alex Dupleix is the number one there. She's sitting literally right next door to Rachel Reeves. But of course, the Labour government has got a challenge because their manifesto is not about being commercial. It's not about enterprise. It's about socialism. And the two are not happy bedfellows. So I'm impressed by what I've seen. And I know a lot of people raise eyebrows, and I raise eyebrows at myself, but I am, and that has been my experience. And we're doing a final call to evidence this week about what's been happening in terms of tax efficient investing and how we can make that better. We got 3 changes in the autumn budget to EIS, which is fantastic. I have one more that I would like. And the Women and Equalities Commission report that was shared in October, scathing about the opportunities and the resources and the investment we give to women, but has opened the shutters on it. Now we need to see this government, subsequent governments make a difference here, but we also need institutional investors to change, to support more entrepreneurs by making larger tickets, and not just in AI, fintech, life science. There are a plethora of other sectors out there that makes up the SME contribution to the UK. And we need to shine a light on all of them, because whilst we have this focus on tech, AI, and life science, the rest is being left in the dark, and that needs to change. We are good enough. We are a country of shopkeepers. I think in my previous life, I was an administrator in a stately home. I love a Dymo tape. I'd like to label things. We are good at this shit. And, all we need is a platform and growth capital and resource that allows us to catapult that into excellence. Again, because we've done it before and we can do it again.
And it's arming people with the confidence that they will get support being an entrepreneur. You talked earlier about your daughter having ADHD, and you've talked a lot about your curiosity. We have a generation of a number of generations who are coming up who actually embrace being a founder or being an entrepreneur more than perhaps we've seen in decades. What I'd like to know is how you see government supporting education or generations to become entrepreneurs, more so than from a financial perspective, maybe more educationally.
I mean, educationally, we need to get a lot better, full stop. And if this government, let's just remember when Singapore was in the doldrums, they turned everything around and they created an education system there which is second to none. So it is possible to do it even on a tight budget, but somebody needs to make a decision. And this is the fundamental flaw about our government, is a 4-year term.
Yeah.
And so nobody is looking to the future. Everybody is short term, quick. I think if we spent less time in government being rude to people and more time working cooperatively together with the skill set that sits in that house, I think things would be a lot easier. But also, I have a problem with the fact that we don't have experience within government. We have got a lot of career politicians, and we don't have people who have done the doing, who have walked the walk. And that needs to change. And that needs to change by making those roles attractive, because who wants to be trolled on social media to the nth degree? So pay these people properly for what they're doing. But the problem is all pay and rations are determined by MPs. So I would say that the Lords has to look at this differently and pull together a suggestion and a bill that we start paying MPs as they should be paid, as we would top executives in business, and attract top executives in business to come and be politicians, which is what used to happen in the good old days when people were doing it as a philanthropic exercise. We need more experience, and we don't have that.
To the education piece, we often talk about how money is a taboo in this country, and that impacts children's financial literacy as they grow up. That's not the case in America, for example, or other cultures have different relationships with money. But I think something's more fundamental than that is there might be almost a misunderstanding or a lack of education around risk, more generally, risk versus reward. And I wondered if you agree with that.
I think it's absolutely true. I think we don't... Look, everything that we do, we've invested in bonds. Bonds are safe. Bonds are boring, but bonds are safe. And we vote in equities because equities, they'll perform. And since the 80s, we've invested in property because property has now outperformed stocks and shares. But we don't want to do anything that in any way endangers our risk. But the irony is, investing in so-called high-risk enterprises as part of a balanced portfolio gives you a better return. And there seems to be a misunderstanding about this. You do it with sense and take expert guidance, but there's nothing to stop you actually getting that reward. Because what I've seen happen, and this certainly happened to my business, I remember a great friend of mine who was desperate to invest in my business, got her financial advisor around to see me. He went back and he said, absolutely under no circumstances should you invest. She invested, I think it was £190,000 in the business, and she got £1.7 million back tax-free because she ignored him. Because a lot of the advice comes from people who are ill-equipped to give that sort of advice. And yes, you go to this with a sort of an open mind, but If you don't want to be like me and make specific angel investments, you can invest through an EIS fund, which is a very tax efficient way of doing it. And that gives you access to those early startups and early scale ups and without so much risk. So rather than do a fund, I have 11, I think, direct investments, because the law of averages says that 2 or 3 of those will do okay. But also, I really enjoy doing it. And, for some of them, I've been right place, right time. Others, I've had one that's just been overtaken by ChatGPT. But, I had a go.
Yeah.
But then I've got 3 gut-orientated ones that are, all 3 of them are on fire. And that's because it was something I loved. And that's the thing. If you want to invest, what's your passion? Do something that you know and you understand. Don't do something that means meaningless to you, because then you'll know. You have an instinct if that's going to be okay. Do the numbers, work around all of that, but you know. But a shocking statistic, just to end on this one, is Charles Stanley and Bohers did a piece of research, and they discovered that just over 8% of exited female founders did not invest in other female entrepreneurs.
That's interesting. Deliberately, or because the universe didn't accessible?
Want to. They didn't like the risk profile of angel investing or investing in entrepreneurs. Okay. And I may mislead there. It might not just be women. I think it's entrepreneurs full stop.
That's interesting.
And that has got to change, because I know, and I've seen with friends of mine, they just don't want to stick their head above the parapet. They don't want to lose. But women are twice as more likely to invest in other women. And there's a great investment newsletter you can sign up for, which is called Araya, and they do angel investment program, and that is all about learning how to be an angel investor. And ironically, 70% of their graduates have been women. So there are ways, before you dip your toe in it, that someone will hold your hand through the whole process to make sure that you're confident in what you're doing.
Joanna, this has been wildly fascinating. And it sounds like you found your purpose, again, that also brings together your values, that resilience, that solution creating, and also looking out to what you can think about and show your family and your girls.
Can I just give a plea to anyone that's watching this? If you are an exited entrepreneur and you've got all of that experience, please, please, please share it. We did a survey and it came out that 78% of women are desperate to hear from people that have done it before. They don't want to spend their time explaining the whys and wherefores to people that haven't done it and don't really understand where they're coming from. So if you can give your time, and I don't care what your gender is, please get in touch with me, because I can point you in the direction of people who would love to pick your brains.
Well, that's a wonderful place to leave it. Thank you so much for your time. Again, hugely wide-ranging conversation. I would love to ask one last thing, which is going to put you on the spot. But if you have someone today who's built a business, it's their baby, there's a team they look after, there is so many different factors, and they're thinking of going through a sales process, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I would say find someone who can run the business while you do the process, because it is exhausting. And can I give a second one?
Yep.
Is I was very lucky. I was an administrator. My files looked like some kind of, perfect example of whatever. There is so much you need to pull together. Start making sure that that's right, that your data room is not going to be the bane of your life. It's got to be the easiest thing you've ever done, because finding out all of that information and making sure it's in the right place and it's up to date is vital, because otherwise it could come and bite you on the bum when you're in the middle of your process.
Great place to leave it. Thank you so much, Joanna Jensen. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.